Another important consideration to be made is the difference between setting and mapping, which is often the cause of many of the errors that we might have, especially when we are typing very fast. So there's a very important difference. Actually, when we map something, we map an aesthetic to a variable, so to a variable of our data frame. And instead, when we use settings, we set an aesthetic to a constant value. So let me show you an example with color. Actually, to tell ggplot that you are interested in mapping something or in setting something, the difference is whether you declare it inside the as part or not. So here in this first example, we are using, as usual, our dataset and our aesthetics. And then geonPoint has defined as an aesthetic that color should be mapped to highway. And then outside of this aesthetic part, we have said that the size of the dots should be 3. Okay, so actually this is a mapping and this is a setting. Okay, instead, if we wanted all the colors to be of the same value, for instance, dark blue, we would have skipped altogether the as part, and so we would have stated color, dark blue, and then size without using as. So let's see how this works. In the first example, ggplot mpg, where as is displacement, highway, and then geonPoint has an aesthetic mapping, which is color, which is set to highway as well. And then here outside the as part, then you just specify that size is 3. So this is what we get. We get that the color is mapped to highway and that all of the dots are of the same size, which is size 3. Instead, if we wanted to set this, we would remove this as part, and so we would add here a color, let's say dark blue. And so now all of the dots are of the same color because we have set it to be dark blue. One common mistake is wanting to set a color, but because we are very used to writing as, putting it inside as. That means that we do it like this, okay? And let's see what happens if instead of setting this to dark blue, I map this to this string saying dark blue. Well, what it happens here is that this is not dark blue. This is actually the first color in the default palette of ggplot. And what ggplot has understood from my command is that I want the color variable to be mapped to some other variable, which, by the way, is constant for everyone. And so it has created a legend with the category dark blue, and all of the points belonging to this category are colored with the same color, which is the default color. Okay, so this is a very common mistake. Wanting to set a value, but putting it inside the aesthetics declaration. Another mistake that you will find is that if you define the color here, color dark blue, that means you define it outside the aesthetics of the call to ggplot, then when you want geonPoint, and let me specify size 3, you don't have any color here. And that's because this is a setting and this is not inherited by the subsequent layers. So if you want this to be set to dark blue for geonPoint, you should specify it in the geonPoint layer. So I encourage you to practice on this because this is very important. So try to do the same, but instead of color, using size, and let's see what you get. So that's all for dataset and mappings, and see you in the next lesson.